question. Any questions from the audience? Yeah, can you come up? Maybe we'll go one question per speaker. So Tim, I will start with you because you are already up here. So any indication for your tension band over with cannulated screws at this point, or we should all use every case just a plate?
Well, we're big on cost. so anytime you add cannulated screws or plate fixation, when we could do it cheaper, we always kind of look for a little less expensive technique with equivalent outcomes. So I think the data is very clear that if you look at the graph, the tension band technique is the lowest of the three different types of fixation. It's tension band without cannulated screws, then cannulated screws with parallel fixation, then cannulated screws with figure of 8, and then the plates. And so that's the level of stability that goes up. But I think if you have a healthy patient with transverse fracture patterns, I think that you can use traditional techniques. But cannulated screws, I think, are an option, more expensive, a little more futzy to use.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Lee, what is the indication for an external fixation in these days? Is there any?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's really good for temporizing when there's like gross contamination. You can still use it for definite fixation. I think results have shown that long-term outcomes is actually not is equal to like plate fixation. But the way I like to think about it is, like for example, you drive to work, right? Why do you drive to work? Because you get there faster. And so even though you can still get to work, by the end of the day, if you walk, you still get there faster, right? And so I think the results have shown that with plate fixation, your range of motion, you actually do clinically better in the short term. I think that makes a difference. And in the long term, I think it kind of equalizes. And so I think there's still a role for external fixator, definitely.
Okay, thank you. And Dr.
Before you go on, just on the same thing. So you have a, what's your indication difference for spanning wrist plate versus an X-Fix? I mean, when do you, other than contamination, open wound, is there any time where you're thinking, oh, I need an X-Fix here? Or is it always, I'm going to put a lock plate, dorsal plate, like a, spanning lock dorsal plate?
Yeah, so I've, at least in my hands, in 10 years, I've been putting a X-Fix. I've actually converted X-Fixes to dorsal spanning plate because I think it's just much more convenient for the patient. One of the indications that is really strong for a dorsal spanning plate is the metadiaphyseal comminution, which takes about 3 to 4 months to heal the segment. If you have an external fixator for 3 to 4 months, very high likelihood you might get like pin complications.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, and Dr. Marmer, so sliding hip screw, I think our residents sees a couple of them, but I don't think any of them are going to be doing any sliding hip screw when they graduate because they don't feel comfortable anymore. They only know how to nail it. What would be any indication, the best indication for a sliding hip screw, I guess?
I think it's the simple fracture pattern, and I think it's the data would suggest, if you have a simple fracture pattern, you are saving the cost. You're not getting you're getting the same outcome, and occasionally I mean, this is an implant that can work, can bail you out of some situation. So I think that's exactly the problem. The problem is that we are not using it. That's why our residents are not using it, and our fellows are not using it, and they're less likely to use it later. And we're kind of letting it die down. But I think it's a mistake. I think we should. It's on us to use it in the right indications. So this tool remains, and I think it is valuable because I think the nail is not like I said. Some fracture patterns can actually get you into more trouble than a DHS will.
Okay, question.
I'd just make a comment. I think that the dying sliding hip screw, it may partially be generational as well. I mean, I think that if you look at the more senior people, they probably have quite a good experience with it. And then the younger surgeons come along that aren't trained, and then they go into the community to go into practice, and they don't want to start anything that's new because they don't want to get a bad outcome and get a bad reputation and then have to defend it on their boards. And so they continue to use the nail, and then all of a sudden the sliding hip screw begins to fade. And It just looks like a cat that's kind of chasing its tail, you know?
I think if Jeff Englund does the same study again, it's going to be like 0%.
Yeah, I think that's,
Sliding screw users
Yeah.
in the board collection period. Go ahead.
Yeah, like I say, I think a hypothetical good indication for a sliding hip screw would be one of those occult intertroch fractures or insufficiency fractures that you diagnose on MRI. I'm not sure that it's less invasive to blast through their abductors with that big entry reamer than to just put in a sliding hip screw with a 2-hole side plate. I think that'd be a good indication for it, but those implants aren't on the shelf anymore. So this notion of them being cheaper is not true, because if the company has to bring it in, there's a big charge for them bringing in something versus something that's on your shelf to use. So I think it circles back to the same place, that for every reason, it's probably not going to get used.
Unless we are forced by the payers or the hospitals, I don't think we are going back to the sliding screws. Go ahead.
I had success with the sliding screw. I had success with the IM nails. And I can tell you, I hope a sliding screw will be history of orthopedics. I think we're, I don't know why you're holding to this device. I cannot understand it. Whether it's biomechanically, blood loss, the only contraindication for me, not using nail, if you don't know how to use it.
Okay, well taken. The last for the Ashraf. So in this context, where are you seeing this semi-extended approach, I will say, include anything other than infrapatellar nailing? You think in 5 years we're going to be saying the same thing as for the sliding screw that we are saying for infrapatellar nailing?
I mean, I'll still probably be doing an infrapatellar nail for simple diaphyseal fractures, you know, even if despite those who don't want me to, you know.
We will see, I guess, with time.
I'll just say that I think you have to know how to do that technique. And the reason why that is, if you get a non-union and there's an infection, nobody is going to want to go through the knee to get that nail out. Yeah. You have to dig out all that stuff in there. So I think what you said in your talk was really good, which is, you know, any kind of non-union, no matter what the approach was, you're going to have to know how to do that technique. Yeah. So I think it's a good thing to keep to know how to do.
But we cannot deny, I guess as a last word, we cannot deny that infrapatellar nailing takes more energy, more moving the leg. It's much harder technically than a semi-extended approach in these days.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.